Hello everyone. Thanks for those who are joining now. Our LinkedIn Live regarding our AI talent report. This year we're covering a lot more. The actual report is its biggest it's ever been. So that's really exciting, and we'll definitely dig into that today. And for those who are joining, I'd love to kind of hear where you're joining from location-wise, because obviously we are covering quite a lot of different locations within our report this year. So it would be great to kind of see if we can tailor some of the insights to where you're joining from. So yeah, if you could kind of introduce yourself in the comments and where you're joining from, that would be awesome. I am currently joining from the rainy St Albans city, so not the best weather this morning. I know some people are joining from better locations, sunnier locations. So yeah, it would be awesome to find out a bit more about where people are joining from today. Just to introduce myself before I kick off everything, I head up our AI team here at Understanding Recruitment. We actually help to scale up teams that could be in lots of different domains. So we actually cover the likes of healthcare, finance, tech for good, renewables. We essentially build out specific AI and data teams within those. Or, on the flip side, we also do help to sort of scale AI startups too. So we cover things like machine learning engineering, research engineering, data science, and data engineering. Obviously, the AI industry is growing rapidly, meaning job titles are changing all the time, but that's where we sit within that. So hence we will be kind of covering lots of different job titles today, and that is why the report is the biggest it's ever been. Really exciting, as of course we're seeing a lot of change within the industry, but yeah, I've put my contact details below, just so you can maybe find out a bit more about me, or on LinkedIn, or drop me an email after this. But yeah, perfect. And hi everyone. I can see that everyone's kind of commenting below. Thanks, Sam. You're also with me in the rain. Seems like it's similar sort of weather in Birmingham as well as sort of North London. Perfect. So yeah, keep commenting below. I'll be having a look at the comments. We will be doing a sort of Q&A session after we finish up the report. So any questions as we go, please kind of drop them in, and I'll be keeping a kind of close look at this where I can. Hi Ed, joining from Understanding Recruitment. How are you? Cool. So if we jump into our 2024 AI talent and salary report, as you can see there, we're covering the UK, Europe, and the US within that. So if we scroll down, we kind of discuss a little bit of an intro in this report about what we've seen in 2023 and what we think is essentially going to happen in sort of this year onwards. So we can see that there's a lot of sort of focus within AI and climate. There's a lot of AI funding going into sort of renewables, green tech organizations, also stuff like quantum ML. We see a lot of the bigger organizations there sort of expanding their ethics team, as we're kind of seeing, will there be sort of rules and legislation for how we use AI in the future? So we did a little bit of an intro there. If we scroll down, there is a little bit of a glimpse into kind of our predictions for this year. And so far, we've been pretty spot on. So for those who will kind of be asking for this report after, it could be a really good use of time just to dig into the details there and see where you could focus sort of your learnings and career development, as those are our predictions for how AI is going to grow this year. So scrolling down, what we did here was kind of share some of the companies that we've been working with, some of the amazing organizations, TikTok, Poly AI, Gambit Research, the list goes on. We work with a whole range of companies, from sort of scale ups to large scale companies. Hence, why we believe we got quite a good understanding of the market, because we're kind of seeing how it's growing and adjusting from different sort of organisations and sizes. So as we scroll down, we'll sort of dig into more of the details of our insights. We start off with the sort of machine learning side of things. What I will say is today, as the report is 35 pages long, we won't go into absolutely every detail, but please feel free to connect with me after, or we can jump on a call after to go into these details a little bit more. So from the UK and Europe, we can see that there's a large number of professionals in this space. It is growing year on year. But the issue that I can see is obviously gender disparity, and the gender split is still quite vast. And if we scroll down into the sort of US as well, we can see there is some slight improvements, but it is a very much those who don't identify as being male, they are kind of taking up a large portion of the market. So a big aim for myself this year is to see how we can really kind of create more gender fluidity within that sort of sector. And if we scroll down even further into this report, we can kind of see where these locations are. So London, no surprises there, tends to be the hotspot for machine learning professionals. Cambridge, Bristol, Edinburgh and Manchester kind of taking the way there too. And then scrolling into Europe for machine learning, we can see that London is actually still the hotspot across the whole of Europe, which is super exciting for me because I'm very, very close to London. But again, Paris is making some real waves within the market alongside the Netherlands, Berlin and Munich. Is anyone just for, I guess, a bit of insight here, is anyone joining from any of these locations? If so, please feel free to drop a note in the comments. It'll be interesting to see your sort of perspective on hearing about Europe's growth here. And then if we scroll down, looking into more of the US, we can see that obviously there is a bigger difference there with sort of San Francisco leading the way. They have long been kind of the title runners in regards to location. But again, we're seeing some growth in areas like Washington, D.C., Boston and Los Angeles as well. So very, very good times to be in AI. And as we scroll down here, we wanted to share some insight into universities producing this talent. Hi, Maria, as well. I see you're joining from London. We can see that the universities in the UK, the top one is Imperial here. And then in terms of Europe, we're seeing that the Technical University of Munich is really kind of leading the charge in terms of producing this machine learning talent. And if we scroll down into the US, we see that Georgia Institute of Technology leads the way, shortly followed from sort of Stanford and Carnegie Mellon University. What I would say is it seems as though maybe there isn't such a big shift in terms of the universities producing this talent, but from where I'm standing in the years that I've been in this industry, which is going on 7 now, we are definitely seeing that there is some sort of disruptors in the university fields. Georgia Institute of Technology has long been a big producer of talent in this space, but we can see sort of Columbia and California climbing up the ranks as well. And scrolling down into the sort of degree side of things, we can see that computer science and computational science for UK talent is kind of the top field of study. Scrolling into Europe, it seems to be pretty similar there too. We see the sort of mathematical fundamentals and physics, big data and physics kind of collaborating there. And then US professionals, again, very, very similar, but we see the rise of degrees such as data science and electrical and electronics engineering. So there is some shifts happening in the space, but computer science, no surprises there for me personally to see it kind of taking the way on all different locations. So scrolling down into the top employers, it's exciting to see in the UK, there's some new faces up there. GSK and faculty are definitely making some waves. But Again, we see our Metas, Apples, Snaps kind of still employing this top talent. Kubrick are definitely up there, but obviously for those who don't know, Kubrick do also train talent in machine learning engineering. So for those who are considering kind of a shift into this industry, it could be worth kind of having a look into Kubrick Group, as they are more of a training facility as well for people looking to get into sort of machine learning, data science, etc. And then Europe, we do see a few differences. Apple and Meta are still up there, but Spotify, Umdena, Yandex, Bosch are really kind of doing some exciting things in the space, and kind of, as we can see from the last sort of 12 months, they're looking to expand their teams there too. And then lastly, looking at the sort of US side of things, there are some kind of well-known faces there, Adobe, Google, but also Lockheed Martin and TikTok are doing some exciting things too. So definitely worth keeping our eyes peeled on that. Hi, Benita. Nice to see you joining from Stockholm. We also did some surveys, and that's something really important to note here. We actually definitely spread the word about our talent report, and so a lot of our data is coming from our network in the space and our secure CRM system, alongside the data that we have kind of acquired from our last 12 months in the AI sector. So 63% of our respondents said that they saw the AI and data industry as diverse. Just from those kind of joining the live at the moment, it would be awesome to see, what do you think about that? Is that something that you see in the industry? It's a slim kind of margin over saying that it is diverse, but yeah, really interesting to hear your insights as well from those on the live. So scrolling down here, we can then start digging into the salary data, which I'm sure a lot of people are joining for. We won't kind of go into every single detail of this. Like I said, we can definitely discuss this information, or the report will be on our website to download. As you can see there, there's a link there that you can directly click on too. Machine learning engineering from graduate level, we saw averaged out as a starting salary at 46, and then it goes to head of, and that was averaging at 131 roughly. Research engineering, a slightly different area of machine learning engineering. We see the junior side starts a little bit higher. Typically, we see for a research engineer, they will have a PhD, and this is not specific to every single company, but generally we tend to see a research engineer as having a PhD, which makes the valuation slightly higher. In terms of head of research, we see that going to 122. Prompt engineering, a really, really exciting space that is developing out. And I definitely saw in the last 6 months that was really growing. This is still developing out. So these salaries are likely to change a bit more. But from what we saw, the junior salary started at 48,000 in the UK. And at sort of senior level, it was 81,000. But let's see how that changes. In Europe, we're seeing graduate level for machine learning engineers pretty similar, starting at 41. 1,900, nearly 42 there, and then sort of head of at 134,000 euros. For research engineering, a little bit more again, 51,000, and then head of research seeing it sort of 133,000. And then scrolling into sort of prompt engineering, again, it was pretty similar, a little bit more of a premium in Europe for prompt engineering. As the sort of senior level was 93,000, roughly speaking. The US obviously is a very different ball game in terms of salaries. So actually for a grad level machine learning engineer, you're looking at sort of the 92,000 mark. And that actually for head of can go up to 232. And again, these are based off of averages. So, for example, some of the slightly larger companies are likely to pay more than that. And then on the flip side, some of the smaller startups might be paying slightly less than that. But it's just a good number to kind of look at. Research engineering in the US started at 129 and went to 241, and prompt engineering 168 to 227, depending on leveling. And of course, like I said, we're going to have to whiz through this because of the time we have, but feel free to have a jump on our website and download the report. For hiring managers, this is an interesting stat. Do you feel you are remunerated well, or are you underpaid? We saw that 45% of people who rated on this survey thought that they were underpaid, and that's on a global level. So there's a lot of room for people who are feeling underpaid. Is it a good time to start hiring in this market where the likelihood is there are people potentially looking for their next role because of the sort of fact that they're feeling underpaid? Cool. So jumping down into the next page, now we start to look at data science, which is a slightly different sort of application there within the AI and data space. What we saw was there was a slight improvement on the gender disparity, 70 to 30%. Male to female in the UK, and the actual median tenure of data science professionals was roughly under 1.5 years. So for employers, it's really important for those talented data scientists in your team, how are you retaining them? Because actually the stats are showing that roughly just under 2 years, they could be looking for their next role. And that kind of follows through into Europe. Similar gender ratios there in Europe. And as we scroll down, further into the report, you can see it's quite similar in terms of the tenure, and across the US as well. There's not huge differences there, slightly longer for the US in terms of how long people stay in a position, but not really that much. Location wise, what we saw, London again was a big hotspot, but we saw the rise of places like Leeds and Edinburgh for this talent, and in Europe again, London was taking the lead, actually more closely followed by Paris this time. And then we saw Madrid really make some moves in data science in the last 12 months as well. So US-wise, San Francisco again, similar to the ML side of things, they were leading the way. And it was the same sort of names up there and abouts for the location. So scrolling down again, if we just jump straight into the salary data, the university information was pretty similar, but that being said, definitely worth kind of considering. So the salary data actually was quite interesting for this one, actually. There is a slight premium on machine learning talent. I'm aware that sometimes a machine learning engineer and a data scientist, depending on what company you work for, can be pretty similar roles. But for data scientists that we placed, and also from the survey data we got, it started at a grad level in the UK at sort of 53,000 and averaged out there. For a senior, we saw 84,000 as the average, and a head of level 132,000. So still a really competitive field in terms of pay, and Europe was fairly similar. The numbers were a little bit lower in terms of salary data, but not really much. It was sort of 51,000 euros all the way to sort of 129 really. And then for the US, we saw there was obviously as we've seen before, typically there is a higher cost of living in the US. So grad 102 all the way to head of 272. And then in the middle there, we saw one of the sort of 180 figure, which for a sort of mid to senior level seemed to be the sort of average for a data scientist. So yeah, really interesting stuff. But yeah, a lot of growth happening. So we're expecting some sort of changes this year too, and positive changes for those in the industry to get paid a little bit more. What benefits do machine learning and data scientist professionals typically get? We saw that healthcare was pretty important for the UK, Europe, and US. Shares, gym. There was stuff like medical cash plans and travel sort of help as well. So what are your thoughts on that as any sort of professionals in the space? Does this look similar to what you're getting in terms of your extra benefits? Is there any that you think we've missed? Please feel free to comment, because it's always really interesting to share this information with your network. And the main three benefits that professionals in this space saw as most important, again, was sort of healthcare, as we saw up there, private insurance, and shares. So the rise of shares will be more important as we see the rise of startups in this space as well. And then scrolling down, we can see that we did some other sort of information, little nibbles there, with our machine learning professionals offered flexi time. We saw that a large percentage, 74%, got that. On the flip side as well, with remote working, there was a lot of professionals in this space that had been offered remote working. And then scrolling down, we dug into that a little bit more. Would you accept a role that didn't offer remote working? 46% said no, 44% said not sure. So we're seeing that the flexibility is super important to professionals in this space, and 4+ days seem to be the most popular option for people being allowed to work remotely. So definitely worth kind of thinking about as an employer, are you offering that? Scrolling down now, we had some further information into sort of predictions for this year, and sort of the job titles. So how many have experienced the people who kind of voted and participated in the survey? The large percentage were sort of 6 to 9 years. So a lot of the professionals kind of voting in the survey were at that sort of medium to senior level. And the most close job title we saw was machine learning engineer. That's the most common a lot of us see, but there was research engineer, research scientist. It's still definitely an industry where new role titles are evolving all the time. You see Gen AI engineer, large language model engineer, those sorts of titles are rising as well. And the most interesting area of AI and big data seemed to be computer vision, NLP, generally sort of the machine learning fundamentals, but also we saw generative AI and reinforcement learning kind of climbing up there too. Cool. So now kind of jumping into data engineering. Is there anyone on this chat who's a data engineer at the moment? If so, definitely comment, because I'll try and kind of tailor this to your sort of experience level and where you're located. But we saw again in the UK sort of 1.4-year tenure for data engineering professionals, and in sort of the same sort of tone, we saw the gender ratios being quite male dominated, both in the UK and Europe. And as we split into sort of the US, because sometimes that can be a slightly different culture there, it did seem quite similar with it being 70 to 30% gender split. What I will say is generally data engineering seems to be a little bit more diverse than machine learning and data science at the moment. But hopefully we can kind of see some more uplift and a bit more balance in the industry too. And diversity, equity, inclusion is on the forefront of a lot of people's mind at the moment, and that's great to see. Scrolling into location, London for the UK was a top spot. We saw Manchester and Bristol there as well. It's great to see some new locations jumping into that too. And then in Europe, we saw London, Paris again, some similar names there. But for me, seeing this, it's great to see some more like professionals in Madrid and Berlin, as that's not something I've seen so much before. So definitely worth keeping an eye on those locations for sure. And scrolling down into the US, New York actually was kind of the top employer. San Francisco is still up there, but really exciting to see Dallas kind of employing lots of talent in the data engineering space at the moment as well. So when we were looking at this, we also wanted to look at the universities again for this space. For the UK, the top universities producing data engineers were the University of Manchester and Imperial. And then for Europe, which kind of coincides with Amsterdam and the Netherlands really producing a lot of this talent, we saw the University of Amsterdam alongside Warsaw and the Madrid, I'm not going to try and pronounce that, but Madrid's kind of most computer science university there. And then for the US, we saw Northeastern, Georgia Institute of Technology again. And excitingly, we saw the University of Texas and Dallas as well. Degrees wise, we saw that in terms of the sort of degrees, they were quite similar to data science, but we did see the rise of the information technology degree, both in the UK and Europe. The mathematical and sort of physical fundamentals are really important. for this space as well, just due to the data pipeline work that's often done and the development of those. So that was really interesting to see. And then for the US, as we scroll down there, it was pretty similar. Computer science is still up there, of course. So let's look at the top employers for data engineers. In terms of the UK, Kubrick again were up there. We saw JLR, NatWest, BT as well. And then in terms of Europe, there were some slight differences with those who were kind of employing the talent in Europe. So if we scroll down there, we can see that Capgemini, the big sort of consulting giants, were really acquiring this talent. But again, we saw EPAM Systems, Solita, IBM as well, kind of really making some headway there too for data engineering. And then for the US, there was some slight different names. CVS Health was one that I haven't seen in the past couple of years. So definitely some data pipeline development happening there. Sort of Optum, Capital One again, making a name for itself, and the likes of Meta, Amazon, and Apple too. Cool. So as we scroll down a bit further, we did have some kind of pop-up of quotes there for data engineering and what people thought about the industry. But if we look at salary, we saw that graduate level for the UK typically started at 41,000, and for head of, it went all the way up to 146. Again, we've got quite a few exciting jobs in this space at the moment. So if you are looking for something, definitely check out our website. And then for Europe, it sort of was a slightly lower starting salary, but not by too much of a long shot. And it started about 38,000. Mid-level, we were seeing sort of 59, and then 797 as well. And then scrolling further into this, we saw that the US started at sort of 105 all the way to 270 for data engineers. Benefits wise, it was a quite similar story. We saw that healthcare all the way to sort of discounted tech schemes were benefits that data professionals were getting. Stuff like free lunches, gym, dental, personal development allowances, you know, where you're able to go to conference or do courses online. Yeah, those were the sorts of things that if you're not getting, it could be worth asking about with your employers at the moment. And then scrolling down here, we saw the most important benefits for data engineers that we surveyed was the remote working, work-life balance, and healthcare. So a little bit of a different one here, and worth thinking about if you are an employer, are you offering those benefits? And then a few more things on the hybrid work side. Professionals offered flexi time was at 80%, so one of the highest we've seen. In terms of remote work as a whole, we saw again 80%. And then as we scroll down here, we can see a little bit more digging into the details of this. A lot of professionals in the sort of data engineering space are not required to be on site. And also it is one of the essential things for them when considering a job. It's not completely essential, but we saw that sort of 30% it was. So when you're looking for this talent, again, definitely worth considering, as it does keep popping up for the professionals that we interviewed. And then scrolling down here, a little bit further insight, you know, the main people who did complete this survey kind of range between 1 to 9 years. And the closest to the current job title was senior engineer, mid-level engineer. There were some tech leads, but again, we were seeing kind of people referring to themselves as just an engineer rather than popping data engineer in the title. And then the most interesting industry that we got was voted was fintech. There was just general tech, gaming, climate tech, and retail within that too. So a lot going on for professionals in this industry. It's kind of immersing itself into every different domain at the moment, which is obviously super exciting as well. And then scrolling down here, I think that's the end of the report. So thanks for whizzing through that with me again. I didn't want to go too long, even though I've gone for about 30 minutes, but, I wanted to whiz through that as quickly as possible. If we have time, which I think we probably do, it might be good to do some Q&A, sort of a session here as well. And obviously you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. But was there any questions that people wanted to ask? Maybe write them in the chat now. I know that the marketing team are going to help me with this because there are a lot of comments so far. So was there anything that anyone wanted to ask at the moment? I can see that one question was how much remote work is happening in Europe. I would say from my experience, remote work is really prominent for data engineers particularly. We see that a lot of the work is done collaboratively, but on the flip side again, we don't necessarily need to be face-to-face for that to happen. So a lot of people can work on sort of more remote contracts and still be able to kind of jump on Teams, jump on Zoom and talk through issues, but get that flexibility of working from home. Is healthcare related jobs available more in Europe or fintech more available? I'd say there's such a rise with AI and jobs both in fintech and healthcare that we're seeing a lot of jobs in both sectors. I would say fintech probably is a little bit more of a front runner for AI jobs. I think there's just been a lot of investment in the sort of last 6 months into hedge funds, fintechs, and then your more traditional banking type industries. Obviously, there's a lot of value that can come from AI and automating services, using chatbots, and the list goes on really. So there has been a bit more of a rise generally, I'd say, within the fintech cross-referencing with AI jobs. But again, definitely a lot of exciting projects going on with healthcare. So either way, it's definitely worth looking into new jobs in both sectors. How is contracting work in AI and ML? It's kind of, I would say it's on the rise for sure, and particularly in big organizations. But I would say permanent jobs are more of the trend generally within the AI sector. I do see contract work from time to time, but generally the jobs people come in are full-time, part-time, but permanent. So yeah, in terms of one question was, what duration for a machine learning engineer to start a new job? So, okay, so basically what I'm gathering from that question is how long do you need experience within as sort of graduate level to then get a machine learning type job? I would say it can be tricky just due to the nature of how competitive machine learning engineering is at the moment. But what I would definitely do if I was maybe at a graduate level is start doing internships where I can, even where that's within studying time, try and get as much commercial experience as possible. Because that will really help your case and show that you can work on more production grade code, but also kind of understand the mindset of productionizing machine learning models as well. So where you can do internships, that is probably the most valuable thing you can do in order to get that full-time role. Bishwa, I just saw your question. In terms of security, should I be concerned with AI? I would say that can be quite a big misconception with AI. I think there's a lot of fears around AI at the moment. But generally, there's nothing kind of standing out that should be kind of concerning about AI. I think as we grow, particularly in the UK and Europe, there will be laws coming in just to really solidify security with the use of AI and how it is used in terms of AI ethics. But at the moment, there should be no real major concerns because, of course, as much as we are using it, there still is a lot of kind of security around it, and even the government's intervention about how we are using it as well. Any insights on AI and drug discovery? I mean, in terms of that, that's quite technical, and I'll be honest, I'm not the most technical person. But what I would say is that drug discovery and AI have been intertwined for a really long time now. If you look at the likes of sort of Oxford Nanopore, Genomics PLC, we've actually worked and helped scale their AI teams, and it is becoming more interchangeable. So you see more sort of statistical modelling, probabilistic modeling, predictive modeling, that sort of area of machine learning engineering, more the statsy side, is very much intertwined with drug discovery. So skills within that is also always super useful as well. Okay, perfect. In terms of any more questions, I can't see any more coming through. It might just be my Wi-Fi. But yeah, if you did have any questions or anything, please feel free to drop me a message on LinkedIn. And at the moment as well, it definitely would be worth having a conversation with me if you are looking to scale within the AI sector. Please feel free to drop me a note and we can discuss this report in a bit more detail and how hiring will look for you in 2024. So thank you so much for everyone jumping on. It's been a real pleasure. And yeah, thanks so much for your time. Take care, everyone.